Well, our special guest tonight is journalist and author Aatish Taseer, who's ready with his new book, The Twice Born, which deals with Aatish's own complex upbringing, his relationship with his motherland, India, and then India itself, India's culture, politics, and more. Aatish's mother is journalist Tavleen Singh, his father, the late Pakistani politician Salmaan Taseer. And Aatish is here in the studio with us. Welcome to the studio, Aatish. An interesting book because this in a way was a very personal story and a very personal journey for you, wasn't it? You have talked about how you kind of set out to rediscover your roots.
Absolutely. It's like a kind of parallel book to my first book, Stranger to History, which was a much broader book through the Muslim world. But obviously one can't travel that way in India because I grew up in India. And so I was kind of finding an internal rift, which was the rift between the way we grew up in India in this very anglicized way and a kind of India that was completely out of reach. So the book deals with distance, but a sort of internal distance that is not merely physical, but that can exist between like almost centuries, between a few hundred yards, you know. And so it's very enclosed, it's concentrated on Benares, and it uses the Brahmins of Benares as a prism to explore like the kind of cultural wars that are playing out in the country
you
at the
moment. You of course grew up in India, but then you went on to study and you know, abroad, you went to college abroad, and you've written here in 2008, I returned to India for good. I thought my time in the West had not led to a life there, but I saw everything as an anglicized Indian watching an imaginary European or American visitor watch India.
Yeah.
So you, in your own country, felt like an outsider.
I think many people have this double self in India. I think that there are people who are completely belong to the world of tradition who are not divided in that way. But many Indians live with a divided sense of self. And in my case, it was perhaps more pronounced because I'd had this experience of going abroad and one is almost looking in on oneself. And when I returned, I could never regain that instinctive world of my childhood. I was almost forever sort of put at a distance from the place I grew up in, which was interesting because it was a critical distance, but it also made my relationship more complicated.
You spent all that time in Benares, but you've actually made up your mind after all this and the book not to live in India anymore. Now you're settled in New York, right? And why have you decided that
I think India is going to be hard. I mean, I'm married to a tall white man from Tennessee. I'm of Muslim parentage. My father was Pakistani. I'm a sort of English-speaking Indian, and I feel like when I saw what happened,
loads of us are English-speaking.
I know, but I think what
you're, you know, and loads of people are gay.
Absolutely. I just feel I have all three, and that the cultural shift that occurred in 2014 and which will continue to occur will put me at a very sharp angle to this place, and I don't necessarily want to not have my life because of these antagonisms. Like, you only have one life, and I spent a long time trying to fit in and just didn't want to try to fit in anymore, you know. And so that was.
But it's interesting you say that. You feel that post the Modi sort of wave and Modi as Prime Minister, the BJP coming to power, you don't feel that you belong in this country even as a Muslim. Let's deal with that first.
No, I think because I think he's unleashed a kind of cultural terror, and people, I had the first whisper of it years ago as I was growing up, and those were very marginal voices then, and people quickly said, no, this is India, it's inclusive, it includes all these different groups of people, and now the way people speak openly about, even people like me I'm not a religious Muslim, I'm not a practicing Muslim, my sensitivities are all Hindu. But it doesn't matter to those people because the way you're born is what counts, and for someone like me, it would be a very hostile environment. I think every Muslim feels that.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean, and you're saying that it's a double whammy or a triple whammy because you're gay and you are English speaking. But I'm English speaking. So many of us are English speaking.
I think your class of person is like under attack in India. I think you must feel it yourself all the time.
Well, not
I don't think. I bet
English, but it's because I'm a journalist with NDTV.
No, but it's because you belong to a certain background, and that's one of the things that the book explores. Is that in some people a break has occurred. We're not part of the world of tradition. Somewhere along in your family, someone would have gone to a convent school or a public school, and you would have been taken away.
But that's India as well.
I know,
along with what you saw in Benares.
It is, but we're in the middle of a culture war. And the other side is far more powerful. And so it is this, the antagonism is very real for people of this background.
Okay, well, it is interesting that you see it that way. May I ask that do you have disagreements with your mother on her view on this?
Let's not bring my mother into this.
But I mean, because her, you know, she had a lot of high hopes, I think, from this government.
I had high hopes too. Let me tell you. I don't think I've written anything I regret. But on May 16th, 2014, I thought it might be good for India. I'm full of buyer's remorse. I think the country is full of buyer's remorse. I think people are putting on a brave face, but it's been a disaster. He's been a miserable disappointment, and we should feel free to say that.
And you feel that it's that cultural war which is the biggest failure?
Well, I think that I thought, listen, let India have a period of economic prosperity. It was a very bad time in the last years of the Congress government, and I thought there would be a trade-off, that there would be a kind of cultural chauvinism, but there would be growth. What you've had is an economic malaise, and you had a cultural terror, and he's actually used the economic malaise to feed the culture wars. And so he's been a very bad prime minister, and I don't think there is an alternative, but sometimes one should vote negatively, and one should just throw him out.
Well, you're not mincing your words. But can I ask you that you have this interesting background, you know, father Pakistani, mother Indian. You've grown up in India. Did you ever feel any affiliation with Pakistan at all? Did you ever feel the need to want to really rediscover yourself there?
I never felt any affiliation with Pakistan, the country, or the idea of Pakistan. I think it's a bad idea. What I felt an affiliation with was Pakistan as an extension of India. We may even say Akhand Bharat. No, it was undivided Punjab where the affiliation lay. And I think that any Indian who would travel into Pakistan would see it as part of the same cultural sphere. That's where the affiliation ended. There was no affiliation with the idea of Pakistan.
So there's no family or anyone at all?
Of course, one loves one's family, and it's very familiar. The minute you arrive, you see Punjabi culture alive and well, and you see a kind of, it's a very warm place. And so, I mean, all of that I was, of course, like susceptible to, and still am.
So one last quick question is that would you still be visiting India at least, like you are now?
Absolutely.
Even though you've decided that you don't want to live here anymore?
Absolutely. I just don't want to be as worried. You know, V.S. Naipaul said to me once, he said, there came a time in my life when I decided I would stop worrying about India, and it was an immense freedom. And that's what I feel most. It's not that I want to break my bond with India, but I need some distance from it for sure.
All right, Aatish Taseer, it is a very interesting book, The Twice Born, something that is not just reflective of your personal journey, but very interesting for those of you looking at how India has politically and culturally transformed over the last few years, particularly after 2014. Thank you for joining us tonight, and good luck with this. And we will see you all again tomorrow night. Good night.